Hey guys, how's it going? Mies here, back with another Epic 7 video, and today we are not going over the big news that dropped about the Tensor characters. We're not gonna be going over ML, Selene. I know those are the juicy ones out there right now. Everybody's talking about them, but for that exact reason why, I'm not gonna be talking about them today, because if you want information about them, you can probably find them from somewhere else. But not many people are talking about this information, this juicy information about equipment enhancing and the stats that you get them and all the probability information. And probably the reason why is that there was a lot of information and it's also kind of confusing. They don't really explain a lot. They just give you numbers. And because of that, I wanted to go over these numbers and these charts and what they, basically translate to you guys what they mean and what they mean for enhancing equipment and kind of how that changes a little bit of how you should be upgrading equipment in the future. But before we head into all this, I have something that I'm sure all of you gacha gamers will relate. Just a young, wee lad going up to a gacha machine, playing a gacha game, and you see all these shiny triple S's, double S's, whatever, the best units in the game. You're super excited, you go in, and take a look at the back, and you just got completely wrecked. I know you all have been there. I've been there. This girl is basically me. So you guys have been there before. You've experienced what I've experienced. You've been a gacha gamer. Be sure to head over to my store. Link in the description below. I personally bought a pink one right here. Oh, I'm not showing to you guys. I personally bought a pink one that I think looks really good. There are many colors. Feel free to choose from them. There's a hoodie, there's a sweatshirt, there's a t-shirt. Whatever you want, go there, check it out. And yeah, that's about it. Let's get into it. So this page right here, there's a lot of pictures, a lot of kind of tables, a lot of numbers, and it seems daunting at first, but there's actually not too much information that is like really difficult and hard. So these first two images right here are really well, I guess we can start with this top one, right? It's basically saying like, depending on your rarity, you have a certain number of substats. Normal, gray equipment, you start with 0 substats. Green, you start with 1. Blue, you start with 2. 3, you start, the heroic ones, you start with 3. And epic, you start with 4. So purple, 3, epic, red, 4. And normally we're really only going to be thinking about the heroic and epics. Rares and anything below that really aren't going to be upgraded end game. But yeah, that's basically what it's saying. Now this next table, this is kind of interesting, not really. Overall, what it's saying is just that, so here are the first table. Here are the possible roles that you can get for substats. Weapon, you can get all of these. Helmet, you can get all of these. Armor, boots, necklace, ring. These are all the stats that you can get. And this next table below, what it's explaining is that, let's say you want a certain substat, right? Let's say for weapon, you want crit chance. So when you go from 0 to 1 substat, so from normal to good, you have a 12.5% chance to hit crit chance on your weapon. And let's say you didn't hit that, right? You hit attack percent. Now from 1 to 2, so from good to, so basically from 1 substat to 2 substats, you have a 14.2% chance, 14.3% chance to get that crit chance. Now let's say you don't hit it again, right? Now it's a 16.6% chance of getting that. And then you don't hit it again. Now you have a 20% chance of hitting that crit chance. So this is basically just saying that when you're rolling your gear, if you have a certain desired substat that you haven't rolled already, the percentage chance you will roll that substat in your next line. So let's say, you have a purple gear, right? And that has a, attack percent, crit damage, speed, right? And you want crit chance. Then that means from your S plus 12, right? You get an extra line. You have a 20% chance of getting that crit chance. So 1 in 5 chance to get crit chance, which makes sense. The one thing that is a little bit confusing is that, so weapon and armor, right? They both have 3, 6, 8 substats you can roll into, right? 3, 6, 8. Same with armor. So they're 20% and 20% at the end, right? And all their percentages are the same. But the thing that's a little bit confusing and caught me off guard is helmet, boots, necklace, and rings all have the same percent to roll a certain substat. Even though it looks like right here, helmet has like one less, right? It has 3, 6, 9, 10 substats, whereas boots, necklace, and ring have 11. I was a little bit confused about that at first, but it makes sense because helmet, right? On here, it doesn't have flat health because helmets always have flat health as their main stat, and as a result, you can't roll flat health as a substat. But for boots, necklace, and ring, you can roll all of these as, well, not the crit chance. You can pretty much roll almost all of these, like, with a selection of few, like crit chance, speed, crit damage. Like, you can roll almost everything as a main stat, right? So as a result, let's say I have a boot that I have speed base on, right? That basically takes out that possibility and makes it so that it's the same as the helmet, which is why the boots, necklace, and ring have the same probability of rolling a certain substat compared to that helmet. So as y'all probably know, 88 gear can roll higher values. So for example, if we look at attack percent, right, it can roll a 9% as opposed to an 85 gear that can only roll an 8% as max. And this is going to be the case for almost every piece of 88 gear. And there are a few exceptions, and I'll go over that later at the end of the video. But for the most part, 88 gear rolls higher values than 85 gear because 85 gear can be reforged to have those extra stats, right? To become level 90 and have those extra stats, whereas 88 don't. So their main stat is higher as a default, and they also roll into these substats higher as a default as well. Now the difference, and this is the case for both 88 gear and 85 gear, comes in percent stats and at the flat stats. So percent stats are very, very straightforward. It's just a distributed number across all of them, right? So 20, 20, 20, 20, 20. And then it totals 100, right? So there's 20% chance to roll into a 5 or a 6 or a 7 or an 8 or a 9 for attack percent. And that's going to be the same across all percentage. So defense percent, HP percent, it all is the same. Effectiveness percent. But something interesting about these percentages is that for rare 88 gear, and now these are really like, you can't really find too many of these blue 88 gears. I personally have never come across one. So you probably shouldn't be worrying about this, but I just want to explain that for this one, there's a 40% chance that it'll roll into 5 for the attack percent, and it doesn't have the 9% maximum. So you actually, if it's a blue gear, you can't even roll into the 9, which is kind of crazy. So really, if you have a blue 88 gear, probably just don't roll into it. It's not very good. So that is kind of the one exception for this kind of distributed 20% across everything. So this one, you can't roll a 9. You can't roll the maximum. Now, that is percentage stats. Flat stats. That's where it gets a little bit interesting and changes what I think about rolling into certain gear. Because let's look at this. So flat stats. You notice that the red epic ones roll a minimum of a 37 flat attack, whereas heroic, the minimum is 36, and rare, the minimum is 34, and then the max for epic is 53, the max for heroic is 50, and the max for rare is 48. So as a result, lower rarities actually roll worse in terms of value for flat stats because you can't roll as high, and you could roll lower than an epic gear, or basically the higher rarities. So when you're looking at flat stats, you might even think about that and think like, oh, I probably shouldn't roll into this piece of gear because it has a flat stat on it because I won't get as high of a value. Those are going to be rare cases because most of the time you're not looking to roll into flat stats anyways. But in those rare fringe cases, you might want to think about it. And for these, the lowest number and the highest number for values have the lowest percent chance. So if you look 38, 39, 40, 41, etc., all the way up until 52, all have a 6.4% chance of getting hit for those numbers. But for 53, the highest, it only has a 2.9%, and 37, the lowest, about 0.6%, which is nice. It's nice that the percentage of blowing such a low roll is so low, and it's lower than the rest. And that's going to be the case for the other ones too, for heroic and rare, though the lower ones have a pretty high percent chance, but it still is lower than the rest of them, right? So that's something to think about when you're rolling into gear. Flat stats, if the rarity is higher, the flat stats are more valuable than if the rarity were lower. So that's pretty cool. And the percent chances also change as well. Now, that is going to be the case across everything, right? For 88 gear and for the 72 to 85 and anything below, which we don't care about, right? Now, the last stat that I wanted to get into depth is going to be speed, because speed is also very interesting because it is a flat stat, right? It's not a percentage number. So it follows kind of the same rules as rolling flat defense or flat attack or flat HP. A little bit different, but does follow kind of similar rules. So if you look at this, rare and heroic have a very much lower chance of rolling the 2%, the lowest, right? Mostly it's going to be rolling into threes. And then fours are also going to be rare, but not as rare as the lowest one, which is nice. It's very nice for us, right? And that's going to be the case for rare and heroic. But for epic, and this is for 88 gear, remember that. Epic for 88 gear, you can't roll into a 2. So you can roll minimum 3, and it's a 50% chance about to roll into a 3, as same as rolling into 4. So it's like a 50-50 of rolling into 3 or 4, which is very nice. So if you have 88 gear that has speed on it, you should absolutely roll into it, unless it's, of course, those couple of exceptions that I'm going to go over later. But for, let's say, the labyrinth gear, right, those stuff that you redeem from the coin shop, that, or the whatever shop that is called, but for that stuff, if there's speed on that gear, which there always is, you should 100% roll into it, because rolling 3s and 4s are basically guaranteed. They are guaranteed, basically, unless you get a 5, which is absolutely amazing. But you're not going to get anything lower than a 3 or 4 in those. So as a result, you can roll some really, really crazy speed gear, which is nice. So yeah, that is speed for 88 gear. Now, if we scroll down to the 85 gear, speed kind of works the same. You can still roll a 5, which I didn't know. I didn't know you could roll a 5 into speed. So now I guess the max speed that I know of is 35, right? Because you start off with 5, then you roll 5 more 5s. So that's 30, right? 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. So it's 5 more 5s. That's 30. That's 25. And you add 30, or you add 5, then that's 30. And then you reforge, and it's 35 maximum. So you can get a 35 speed piece of gear as a maximum roll. But it's like so rare. I don't even know if anybody has one of those. But again, the difference between the 88s and the 85s is that you can actually roll a 2 in speed. So 88s, you couldn't roll a 2. 85s, you can. But still, the distributions are kind of the same, right? Rare and heroic, you can roll 1s, and you can't roll 5s. Whereas epic, you can't roll 1s, and you can roll 5s. So that's the little bit of difference, and that's the nuance that we've kind of learned today after looking at this. I don't think this was known before, so this is definitely news, at least news to me. So yeah, that's a little bit about speed. So again, 88 gear, if it has speed on it from the lab equipment, definitely roll on it, because you can get some crazy nutty speed gear. And now we know that speed checking heroic gear is not going to be as fruitful as speed checking epic gear, which has always been kind of the case, but now you're even less incentivized to try and speed check heroic gear. So yeah, so that's the gear and the substats and how they roll. So hopefully that helps a little bit there with your gear rolling. Hopefully, it informs you a little bit about rolling into epic gear versus heroic gear and versus the tiers of 88 versus 85s. Now, here come the exceptions. So at the bottom here, they talk about a couple exceptions, which is very, very interesting and really changes my perception of certain gears. So if you look here, number 1, the equipment subset increase probability for arena level 88 gear, so the stuff you buy with conquest points, right, will be the same as 72 to 85. So not only do you not get to reforge that gear, the stats that you're rolling into it are lower than the 88s. So they're the same as the 72 to 85s. So they're actually worse than 85 gears most of the time. Now, it does say the main stat does match 88 gear, which is, nice, I guess. But most of the time, it's only like a 5% difference, or like a 5 speed. 5 speed is quite a bit. So the speed boots, if they have those right now, so like attack percent. If it's speed boots, it could still be worth it. But for the other ones, I think it's actually worse than 85 gear. So unless you're like desperate for a certain stat line, or like a certain set, like right now it's pen set, and I know a lot of people don't farm Cades, so that could be worth it. But if it's like a speed set or like an effectiveness set or a defense set or whatever it is, I don't think it's really worth it to get the 88 gear, because the stats you get on it are going to be overall worse than 85 gears. But so that's really interesting and something that I've learned. The next thing is that for the 88 gear that you receive as an initial clear reward for Hell Raid, which are these ones right here, which, before we thought they were the same as the 88 gears that you bought from the Labyrinth coin shop, that also rolls differently. So again, it's the same thing as the arena equipment. The substats that are rolled will be the same as the 72 to 85, and you can't reforge it. So again, in almost every case, it's going to be worse than an 85 gear. But, it's not like you get a ton of these, right? You only get a couple of these. But I think it's an interesting kind of, interesting thing to know. So for those ones, if you don't roll too great on them, there's a reason why. Now, the third one here is the Bloodthirsty Heroes boots. So these ones right here, right? So the speed will roll at 72 to 85 ranges, but the rest of them will be like an 88 gear. So as you can see here, it comes with health, speed, crit chance, effectiveness. So the speed will roll like an 85 gear, but the rest of them will roll normally. So your hope is that it doesn't really roll into speed because the values will be lower here. But luckily, it's not like the arena gear where everything's going to roll lower, right? So you still have the 88 gear lines for the other stats. And this is going to be the same with the Automaton Tower rings and necklaces. Those boxes that you get for completing level 4 and level 5. Speed is going to be the same as the 72 to 85 gear, whereas the other stats will be the same as 88. So you're actually hoping to not get speed on those rings because they won't roll as well. So that was a lot of information, but luckily that is the end of all the important information that came out on this document. Hopefully this helped you guys basically kind of like translate this entire document. It's kind of like a TLDR if you didn't want to read it / try to understand what all the numbers meant. Hopefully this helps you guys. Let me know if it does in the comment section down below. And as always, leave a thumbs up if you enjoy this, and hit the subscribe button, and I'll see y'all on the next one. Peace out.